Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Part 1. The House After Mom. My name is Lily Foster. I'm 19 years old, and this is the story of the year I almost lost myself and then found something stronger. My mother died when I was 12. Her name was Ann Foster. She was a school teacher who loved garden roses and old movies and the particular smell of books. She died from a sudden heart attack on a Tuesday morning in April, a day that started completely normally and ended with our world split in two. Before Tuesday, after Tuesday. My father, Edward Foster, was devastated. He was a quiet man made quieter by grief, a man who had always expressed his love through presence and who suddenly did not know how to be present with a loss that large. He went to work, he came home, he sat in the chair by the window where my mother used to read. He was there, but not there, alive, but not living. For 3 years, it was just the two of us in our house in Savannah, Georgia. I cooked simple meals and kept the house as clean as I could and learned to need less than I actually needed because my dad was already carrying as much as he could carry. I was 15 when he met Margaret, 16 when he married her, 17 when I understood that the woman my father had married was not the woman she had pretended to be during their courtship, and 19 when everything came to a head in a way I had not seen coming but should have. Margaret Hargrove Foster. She came with plans. She came with ambition. She came with a very clear idea of what our family would be useful for, and she came with a list. At the top of the list was my name. Part 2. Margaret's plan. Margaret was 44 years old when she married my father. She was elegant and well-dressed and knew exactly what to say in every social situation. She had been married once before, briefly, she said, a youthful mistake she did not elaborate on. She had no children of her own. In the beginning, she was careful. She treated me with the particular politeness of someone who needs your goodwill and knows it. She bought me small gifts. She asked about my interests. She told my father how wonderful I was at every opportunity, which felt strange because wonderful was not how I felt, and her saying it felt like a label applied to a jar rather than a recognition of the person inside. But as the months passed and her position in our house became more secure, the politeness changed. It became thinner, more transactional. She began to speak about the future, her vision of the future, in ways that included me as a piece to be placed rather than a person to be consulted. She knew everyone in Savannah's social circles. She attended every charity event, every gallery opening, every dinner party that mattered. And through these circles, she had developed a specific ambition. She wanted to connect our family, which had a good name but not much money since my father's business had struggled after my mother's death, to the Calloway family. The Calloways were one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Savannah. They had a son. His name was Richard Calloway. He was 32 years old, 13 years older than me. He was looking for a wife from a good family. Margaret had decided that wife would be me. She had not asked me. She had not asked my father exactly. She had simply begun presenting it as an obvious and inevitable good idea, the way she presented most things she had already decided. Part 3. The man she chose. I met Richard Calloway at a dinner Margaret arranged in October of my 19th year. I had just started community college. I was studying graphic design, something I had loved since childhood, something my mother had encouraged. I had plans, small ones, but mine. Richard was tall and well-dressed and spoke with the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no about anything important. He was not unkind at dinner. He was pleasant in the way that expensive furniture is pleasant, attractive, functional, revealing nothing of substance. He spoke mostly about his family's real estate business, about properties they owned, about trips he had taken. He asked me 2 questions the entire evening, what I was studying and whether I liked Savannah. He did not seem particularly interested in the answers. He seemed, if anything, to be evaluating rather than connecting, looking at rather than seeing. On the drive home, Margaret sat in the front seat beside my father and said, with the satisfied tone of someone checking something off a list, "Richard was very taken with you, Lily. He told me afterward. He thinks you're exactly the kind of young woman he's been looking for." I looked out the window at the Savannah streets going by, the Spanish moss in the trees, the old squares, the city I had grown up in. "I didn't feel a connection," I said carefully. "Connection develops," Margaret said smoothly. "You don't need to feel it immediately. These things take time." My father said nothing. He drove. I watched the Spanish moss move in the October wind and felt, for the first time, a specific chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Part 4. The pressure begins. The pressure did not arrive all at once. It arrived the way Margaret did everything, gradually, systematically, with the patience of someone who thought several moves ahead. Richard began appearing at our house. Margaret invited him to Sunday dinners, to holiday gatherings, to a birthday celebration for my father in November. Each time he was seated beside me. Each time Margaret found reasons for the two of us to be alone, asking me to show him the garden, asking him to help me carry something, creating small manufactured opportunities or intimacy that felt nothing like the real thing. She began to drop comments into everyday conversation. "Richard asked about you today. The Calloways would be such a wonderful family to be connected to. Richard is exactly the kind of stable, established man who would take care of you properly." That last one, "take care of you properly," made my skin prickle, as if I were something to be taken care of, a problem to be solved, an asset to be transferred to more capable hands. She also began subtly to undermine my college plans, small comments. "Is graphic design really practical? You could always take classes later after you're settled. Not everyone needs a degree, especially when there are other options available." The other options, I understood, were Richard Calloway and the life Margaret had planned for me. I was 19. I was living in my father's house. I had no money of my own. My part-time job at a coffee shop gave me barely enough for my own expenses. I was dependent in every practical sense, and Margaret knew it. She had not created that dependence, but she had noticed it, and she was using it. Lily's truth. Pressure rarely arrives as a demand. It arrives as suggestion after suggestion, comment after comment, until the thing that was never your idea begins to feel inevitable. Part 5. What Lily wanted. Let me tell you what I actually wanted, because this story is about a girl who was pushed towards someone else's plan, and to understand the fight, you need to understand what she was fighting for. I wanted to finish college, not just community college. I wanted to transfer to a 4-year university and study design properly. I had been researching programs in Charleston and Atlanta. I had good grades. I had a portfolio of work that my professor called genuinely talented. The path was not certain. Nothing is certain at 19, but it was real. It was mine. I wanted to live in a city that felt like possibility rather than a story already written. Savannah was beautiful, and I loved it. The moss, the squares, the particular golden quality of the light in the late afternoon. But Savannah in Margaret's social world felt like a stage set where the roles were already assigned, and I was being cast without being asked. I wanted to fall in love, not with a family name or a financial situation or a socially appropriate match carefully selected by someone with her own agenda, with a person, a real one, who saw me and wanted me and whose warmth was not a performance for our family's benefit. These were not extraordinary things. They were the ordinary things that 19-year-olds want, the right to choose their own path, their own people, their own story. Most 19-year-olds take these things for granted because nobody is trying to take them. Someone was trying to take mine, and for a while I did not know how to stop her because she was working through my father, and my father, who had been the person I felt safest with, was not seeing what was happening. Part 6. Dad's silence. My father's silence was not indifference. I want to say that because this story could easily make him into a villain, and he was not one. He was a man who had been broken by grief and then given hope again, and he was holding on to the hope with both hands and not looking too carefully at what it was costing him. He liked Margaret, or rather, he liked what Margaret gave him: order, social connection, the feeling of being part of a couple again, of having someone beside him at events, of not being the widower in the room. She was capable and energetic, and she had brought life back into the house in a way that he genuinely needed. So when Margaret presented the idea of Richard, first as a suggestion, then as a wonderful opportunity, and eventually as an almost decided thing, my father heard it through the filter of his gratitude for her. He saw a wealthy, established man from a good family who was interested in his daughter. He did not hear the transaction underneath it. Part 7. The Engagement Party. The engagement was announced at a dinner party in January. I had not agreed to it. I had not been asked, not formally, not sincerely. Richard had asked Margaret if I would accept, and Margaret had told him yes. And then she had come to me and said, "Richard is going to propose at the Harrington dinner on Saturday. I want you to say yes." Not, "I hope you'll consider it," not, "What do you think?" just, "I want you to say yes." I looked at her across the kitchen table. She was wearing pearls and a silk blouse, and an expression that mixed warmth with steel in a way she had perfected over years of social maneuvering. "And if I say no?" I asked. "Lily." Her voice was patient and firm in the way of a teacher with a slow student. "Your father's business is struggling. The Calloway connection would change that. This is good for your family. This is good for you. You are young. You don't always see the full picture." "I see enough of it," I said. "Then you see that this is the right choice," she said. "Don't be selfish about this." Selfish? She called choosing my own life selfish? I sat across from her and felt something shift in me. Not breaking, the opposite of breaking. Something hardening, something that said, "No, not this, not like this." On Saturday, in front of 40 people in the Harrington dining room, Richard Calloway got down on one knee. I stood very still. The room watched. Margaret watched from across the table with her steel-warm eyes. I said yes, not because I meant it, because I was 19 and had no money and no plan, and the weight of 40 people's expectations pressing down on me. But I said it knowing it was not the last word. It was buying me time. Part 8. The Night Before. The wedding was set for April, 3 months after the engagement. Margaret had organized everything quickly, as if speed itself could prevent second thoughts. On the night before the wedding, I sat in my childhood bedroom, the one with the window that looked out at the magnolia tree my mother had planted, and I did not sleep. I sat with my back against the headboard, and I looked at the ceiling, and I thought about my mother. My mother, who had loved a man she chose herself, who had built a life from her own decisions, who had taught me, without using the word, that a woman's choices were her own, that no one had the right to make them for her, regardless of how they framed the offering. I thought about what she would say if she were here. I did not need to think long. I knew exactly what she would say. She would say, "Lily, get up, walk out. Whatever it costs, your comfort, your security, your relationship with your father for a time, walk out, because the cost of staying is higher, because you are worth more than this, because I did not raise you to be given away like a property transfer." At 2 in the morning, I got up, I pulled a bag from under my bed, a bag I had packed 3 days earlier, quietly while Margaret was at a committee meeting and my father was at work. 2 changes of clothes, my design portfolio, my laptop, my birth certificate, and my passport. the $340 I had saved from my coffee shop job over 6 months. I wrote a note, not to Margaret, to my father, short and honest. Dad, I love you. I cannot do this. It was never my choice. I will call you when I am safe. I am sorry for the pain this causes. Please know that this is the only way I know to be honest. Lily. I put the note on my pillow. I picked up the bag. I walked out of my childhood home at 2:15 in the morning. I did not look back. Part 9. The Woman Who Helped. I had one person to go to. Her name was Ruth Hadley. She was my mother's oldest friend. They had grown up together in Savannah, gone to the same school, been bridesmaids at each other's weddings. After my mother died, Ruth had stayed in my life in the quiet, consistent way that certain people stay. A birthday card every year, a check-in call every few months, an offer repeated at regular intervals. If you ever need anything, Lily, anything at all. I had called her 3 days before, not to tell her everything, just enough. I had said, Ruth, I am in a situation I need help getting out of. I need somewhere to go. Can I come to you? She had said, yes, my door is open. Come whenever you need to. No questions, no conditions, just yes. Ruth lived in a small house on the east side of Savannah, not far from our house, but far enough to feel like different territory. She was 63 years old, retired from teaching, and she had the particular calm of someone who had seen a great deal of life and had stopped being surprised by most of it. She opened her door at 2:30 in the morning without surprise. She took my bag, she made tea, and she sat across from me at her kitchen table and let me talk. All of it, from the beginning, without interrupting. When she finished, she said, "You did the right thing. It took courage, and it will be hard, but you did the right thing." Then she said, "Now, tomorrow morning we are going to call a lawyer, not just any lawyer, a good one, because what Margaret did is not just unkind. Some of it may be illegal, and you need to know your options." Part 10. Running. The morning of the wedding, my phone began buzzing at 7. Margaret, my father, Richard's family's number, which I did not recognize but could guess. I turned the phone face down and let Ruth answer the call she was willing to take. She answered one, my father's. She told him I was safe and with her, and that I would call him when I was ready. She told him calmly but clearly that I would not be returning for the wedding. She told him that I was not sick or in danger and that he should not worry about my safety. She did not apologize for any of it. I sat in Ruth's kitchen and listened. I heard my father's voice through the phone, tight, confused, the voice of a man whose morning had just completely collapsed, and I felt the guilt of it move through me like something physical. I had not wanted to hurt him. I had never wanted to hurt him, but some truths once spoken through action cannot be unspoken. Margaret called Ruth 4 times. Ruth did not answer. By noon, when the wedding was supposed to have started, the calls had slowed. By evening, they had stopped, replaced with a text from my father that said simply, "I need to understand, Lily. Please call me when you can." I did not call that day, or the next. I needed 2 things first: clarity about my legal situation and enough emotional steadiness to have the conversation with him honestly rather than from the collapsed, pressured place I had been living in for months. Ruth understood this. She gave me the space and did not push. She fed me good food and let me sit in her garden in the April Savannah warmth, and she did not fill the silence with anything that was not necessary. Lily's truth. Running is not weakness. Sometimes running is the first act of courage, the decision to stop accepting what is wrong long enough to find something better. Part 11. Starting from nothing. The first week at Ruth's house, I took stock of what I had. $340, a bag with 2 changes of clothes, my design portfolio, my laptop, my documents, and Ruth, who was worth more than all of it combined. I also had something harder to measure, but just as real: clarity. The clarity that comes when you have done the scary thing and survived the first hours of it. The clarity of someone who has been living under pressure and has finally stepped out of the pressure into open air. I could breathe. For the first time in months, I could actually breathe. Ruth helped me apply for a full-time position at a design firm where her former student worked. It was an entry-level position, basic tasks, low pay, long hours. I applied with my portfolio and a cover letter I wrote and rewrote at Ruth's kitchen table 4 times. 3 days later, I had an interview. 2 days after that, I had the job. I started the following Monday. The work was not glamorous. I was designing simple graphics for client presentations, learning the software at a professional level, doing the unglamorous practical tasks that entry-level work always involves. But I was doing it with my own hands for my own salary in a life I was building rather than being placed into. Every Friday, my salary was deposited into an account that was only mine. The first time I saw the number, small but real, I sat in my car in the parking garage and I cried, not from sadness, from something that felt like the opposite of sadness, the feeling of something being returned to me that had been slowly taken. Part 12. The Lawyer. Ruth kept her promise. She connected me with a lawyer named Patricia Owens, a woman in her 50s who specialized in family law, and had, Ruth said, seen everything and was surprised by none of it. I met Patricia at her office on a Wednesday morning. I told her everything. She listened with the focused attention of someone turning facts into categories, organizing what she heard into what was useful. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Lily, what Margaret did was wrong in several ways. Legally, in the state of Georgia, you cannot be forced into a marriage. You are 19, an adult. No one can legally compel you to marry anyone. You made the right choice in leaving." "But she used pressure," I said, "financial pressure, social pressure. She used my father's situation, his struggling business, to make me feel like I had no choice." "Coercion," Patricia said. "That is a pattern of behavior that can have legal implications, particularly if your father's business finances were entangled with the Calloway arrangement in ways that were not fully disclosed to you." She asked me questions, good, specific questions that I answered as accurately as I could. She took notes. At the end, she said, "I think there are several things worth pursuing here. Not all of them are legal matters. Some of them are family matters that need honest conversation, but you have more power than you've been led to believe. Do you understand that?" "I'm starting to," I said. "Good," she said. "That is exactly where we need to start." Part 13. Fighting Back. I called my father 2 weeks after leaving, not from Ruth's house, from a bench in Forsyth Park where my mother used to take me on Sunday mornings when I was small. The fountain was running, the Spanish moss was moving in the April breeze. He answered on the first ring. "Lily," his voice was relieved and strained at the same time. "Are you all right?" "I'm safe," I said. "I'm working. I have a place to stay. I'm okay." "Why didn't you—" he started, then stopped himself, then said, "Tell me what happened. From the beginning. Tell me all of it." I told him all of it. Not the managed, careful version I had given him before, but the full version. The comments about college, the pressure campaign that had built over months, the engagement she had arranged without my real consent, the dinner where she called me selfish for wanting to choose my own life, the night I understood I had to leave. He was quiet for a long time when I finished. "I didn't see it," he said, finally. His voice was different, lower, the voice of a man who was recognizing something he had been refusing to look at. "I know," I said. "I know you didn't." "I should have," he said. "Yes," I said honestly, "you should have." Another silence. Then, "What do you need from me?" And that question, "What do you need from me?" was the beginning of something real between us, something that had been there before and had been covered over and was starting, slowly, to be uncovered again. Part 14. Dad Wakes Up. My father did not change overnight. Real changes in people, in marriages, in understanding do not happen overnight. But over the following weeks, he did something I had not seen him do in 3 years. He started paying attention. He began asking Margaret questions she had not been asked before, about the Calloway arrangement, about what she had told Richard's family, about the business discussions she had been having on his behalf without his full knowledge. He was methodical about it, the way engineers are methodical, gathering information, organizing it, arriving at conclusions he could not avoid. What he found disturbed him. Margaret had represented the Foster family's financial situation to the Calloways in ways that were not fully accurate. She had implied commitments that my father had not agreed to. She had, in pursuit of the social connection she wanted, made promises using resources and relationships that were not entirely hers to offer. He came to see me at Ruth's house on a Saturday afternoon. He sat across from me in Ruth's living room, which was warm and full of books and smelled of coffee, and he looked at me with the specific expression of a man who has been shown something he cannot unsee. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not for not stopping what I didn't know was happening, for not paying enough attention to know, for being comfortable when you needed me to be careful." I looked at my father, at the man who had loved me my whole life and temporarily lost his way in his grief. I felt the old anger, and underneath it, the love that had always been there, that his grief and Margaret's maneuvering had not been able to reach. "I know," I said. "I need you to fix it." "I'm going to, I promise." Part 15. Margaret's Fall. Margaret did not go quietly. People like Margaret rarely do. They have too much invested in the version of events they have constructed, and dismantling it requires them to admit things they have been very careful not to admit. When my father confronted her with what he had found, the misrepresentations to the Calloways, the pressure campaign on me, the commitments made in his name without his knowledge, she did what she had always done. She reframed. She presented everything as having been done for the family's benefit. She painted herself as the only person who was thinking clearly while everyone else was too emotional to see the opportunity in front of them. My father, who was usually patient and measured, was not patient this time. He had seen what she had done to his daughter. He had spoken to Patricia Owens at my suggestion. He understood now what the Calloway arrangement really was about, and he was not willing to reframe it. The marriage did not survive, not because my father stopped loving Margaret entirely, the feelings between people are rarely that clean, but because he could not rebuild trust with a woman who, when confronted with evidence of harm, responded by explaining why the harm had been necessary, who could not say, "I was wrong, I hurt your daughter, I am sorry." She left the house in June, not dramatically, with packed boxes and a moving truck and the particular cold efficiency of a woman who has lost a battle and is already calculating the next move. The Calloway arrangement dissolved. Richard, who had more dignity than I had given him credit for, withdrew gracefully when he understood the full situation. He sent me a brief, polite note saying he hoped I found what I was looking for. I thought that was decent of him. Part 16. The Life She Built. By the time Margaret left in June, I had been at the design firm for 3 months. I was good at the work, better than entry level, and my supervisor told me so and gave me more responsibility and a small raise. I had moved out of Ruth's guest room into a studio apartment of my own, small, clean, mine in every sense of the word. I had a key that only I had. I had a plant on the windowsill that I was responsible for keeping alive. I painted the kitchen wall yellow because I wanted to, and no one could tell me otherwise. I had also applied to transfer to the Savannah College of Art and Design, SCAD, the best design school in the region. My professor at the firm helped me strengthen my portfolio. I submitted the application on a Tuesday evening, sitting at my kitchen table in my yellow-walled apartment, and I felt the particular terrified excitement of someone reaching for something real. I was accepted in August. I called Ruth first. She cried. Then I called my dad. He said, "Your mother would be so proud." And I had to put the phone down for a moment and look at the ceiling and breathe, because he was right. She would have been, and she was not here to see it, and that was its own grief I carried quietly and always would. But I was here, and I was doing it, and that was something she would have wanted. I moved back into my father's house temporarily, not because I had to, but because we were rebuilding something and proximity helped. He was different, quieter in a better way, more present, more careful, more attentive. He had started therapy. He was doing the work of understanding how he missed what he had missed. Ruth was a fixed presence in my life, Sunday calls, monthly dinners, the particular warmth of a woman who loved my mother and has extended that love to me without condition. Sam and I talk often. We have not put a name on what we are. There is time for that, and rushing has never served me well. What I know is that every conversation feels like two people who are genuinely interested in each other. That feels like the right place to start. I didn't know then if Sam and I would become anything. What I knew is that for the first time I was entering something freely, choosing. That alone felt like the most important thing. Part 17. What Love Really Is. I want to say something about love, because this is a story about a forced marriage, and it would be easy to conclude that the lesson is simply, marriage is dangerous, love is a trap, be careful. That is not the lesson. The lesson is something more specific and more hopeful. I started at SCAD in September. In my second week, I met a girl named Maya in my typography class. She was from Atlanta, funny and direct, with the specific confidence of someone who had figured out early what she was good at and stopped apologizing for it. We became friends the way you become friends in college when you are both working hard at something you love, quickly, honestly, with the particular ease of people who are not performing for each other. Through Maya, I met her brother's friend, a young man named Sam. He was 21, studying architecture at Georgia Tech, in Savannah for a weekend to visit his sister. We talked for 4 hours at a coffee shop that Saturday, not about families or arrangements or what our connection might be useful for, about design, about cities, about the specific beauty of the Savannah squares and why good architecture makes people feel safe. When he left that Sunday, he asked if he could call me. I said yes, not because it was useful, not because someone had arranged it, because talking to him felt like talking to a person who was genuinely interested in the person I actually was. That I understand now is what love is supposed to feel like at the beginning. Not a transaction, not an arrangement, not a performance for an audience. A genuine curiosity about another person, a wanting to know more. I did not know then if Sam and I would become anything. What I knew was that for the first time, I was entering something freely, choosing. That alone felt like the most important thing. It is November now, 6 months since the morning I walked out of my childhood home with a bag and $340 and a note on my pillow. I am in my second month at SCAD. The work is hard and the right kind of hard, the kind that comes from being pushed toward your best rather than toward someone else's convenience. My professors are demanding, and I am grateful for it. I am learning things I did not know I did not know. My portfolio is becoming something I am genuinely proud of. My apartment has 2 plants now, both alive. The kitchen wall is still yellow. I cook my own meals and pay my own rent and make my own small decisions about my own small life, and every one of these ordinary facts feels to me like something extraordinary, because not long ago they were not given, they were fought for. My father and I have dinner every Sunday. We are rebuilding slowly, with honesty and without the managed politeness that covered things before. He tells me about his therapy. I tell him about my classes. We talk about my mother sometimes, carefully, lovingly, the way you talk about people who are gone but still present in everything that matters. Ruth is a fixed presence in my life. Sunday calls, monthly dinners, the particular warmth of a woman who loved my mother and has extended that love to me without condition. Sam and I talk often. We have not put a name on what we are. There is time for that, and rushing has never served me well. What I know is that every conversation feels like 2 people who are genuinely interested in each other. That feels like the right place to start. Margaret is gone from my daily life. She is not entirely gone from my thoughts, not because I'm consumed by bitterness, but because what she did taught me things I would not have learned otherwise. She taught me what I would not accept. She taught me the difference between pressure and love. She taught me that the cost of your own life is always worth paying, that security purchased at the price of your freedom is not security at all. I am 19 years old. I have a studio apartment, 2 plants, a yellow kitchen wall, and a design school acceptance, and a growing understanding of who I am and what I am worth. If I could say one thing to the girl who said yes in the Harrington dining room, who felt the weight of 40 people's expectations and her stepmother's steel-warm eyes and said yes when she meant no, I would say this: that yes was not the end. It was the beginning of understanding what you actually wanted. And the no you said at 2 in the morning with a bag and $340 and a note on your pillow, that no was the bravest thing you have ever done. Hold on to that. Hold on to the version of yourself that walked out that door. She is the truest one. I am free. Not perfectly, not without cost, not without the ongoing work of rebuilding what was damaged, but free, choosing, building. And that is everything.